Okay, welcome once again to the Legion of Reason Diversion, coming to you from Alberta, Canada. It's June 23rd, 2019. Most of what we're going to talk about tonight is the regressive left, but we're going to start off with Quebec's Bill 21 and the continuing drama that the passing of that bill entails. We have with us someone to talk about that, David Rand. Hello, David.
Hello there.
Hi, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Yes, my name is David.
Yeah, about yourself.
My name is David Rand. I'm president of Atheist Freethinkers based in Montreal, and also a spokesperson for the Rassemblement pour la laïcité, or the Alliance for Secularism, which is a local Quebec coalition of groups of 7 or 8 organizations that work for secularism, and we're all in favor of this Bill 21, which was recently passed.
Cool.
Yeah. I think we should just start with what Bill 21 is. You might want to go into that in detail.
Well, it does 2 main things. One is that it defines what secularism is based on 4 principles, and it inserts secularism. It declares that the Quebec is an officially secular state, and it inserts those principles into the Charter of Rights and Freedoms of Quebec. And the other thing that it does is that it bans civil servants in positions of authority from wearing religious symbols while they're on duty. What it doesn't do is it doesn't extend the religious symbol ban to all the to all public servants. It doesn't touch things like taxation, which is something, a serious thing that has to be dealt with. But it's a start. It's a very good start. But it doesn't go far enough. But at least it's moving in the right direction.
What do you mean by taxation? Do you mean people that are involved in, assessing your taxes and that kind of thing? Is that?
No, I mean all the privileges that religions have.
Okay.
They have a lot of fiscal privilege, yeah. And this is official charities. It's because Quebec accepts what the federal government's definition of what an official charity is, and one of 4 criteria to be tax exempt is advancement of religion, and that I disagree completely with that.
Yeah.
so that but the good news is that given that the Quebec has declared itself to be officially secular, then that gives a very good handle to fight against this and say, hey, you're supposed to be secular, but this isn't. So so that's one of the things that we have to do in the near future, is to start pressuring the government to respect the very principle which it just adopted.
Okay. So now there's been a lot of controversy surrounding Bill 21. Can you go into that in some? Give us an overview.
The controversy has been. It's very similar to the controversy that was around the Charter of Secularism back in 2013, 2014 by a previous government that tried to pass legislation that was similar. There's an enormous amount of hysteria and misinformation and outright lying by opponents of the legislation. This is really a classic case of regressive leftism on steroids, criticizing this legislation for denying rights, when in fact it does not deny rights to anybody. It actually gives rights. What it does is it bans religious symbols worn by public servants in authority while they're on the job. But of course, when they're off the job, they can do whatever they want. It doesn't have any effect on that, and it doesn't even cover all public servants. And what that does is that helps protect the freedom of conscience of users of public services. They don't have this thrown in their face, and this is especially important because teachers are part of the ban, and that means that children are not exposed to unnecessary religious symbols, and that's a very good thing. Furthermore, one of the amendments that was put into the bill just before it was adopted was a definition of a right that every member of the everybody in Quebec has a right to public services which are secular. And what this means is that this is going to be very helpful in extending the law to further things, such as the taxation, which we mentioned earlier. Everybody has a right to public services which are secular, which means that we can use this to argue against any leftover non-secular law can be attacked on this basis. And so the law asserts rights, this new right to secular services, and it puts a minor restriction on people who wear religious symbols when they're working in the public service in certain jobs, and that helps the rights of users of public services, and especially children in public schools.
Now, there's been one of the criticisms is that this is targeting Muslims. What is a response to that?
Well, it covers all religions. It so happens that Islamists are on a rampage currently, and for the last few years. They're extremely aggressive. They pretend to speak for all Muslims, which they don't. And therefore, they make themselves necessarily a target. That is, the wearing of the veil, whether it be the hijab or the chador or the niqab or the burqa, but especially the hijab. This is a tool that they use to promote their ideology. They promote the wearing of the hijab anywhere and everywhere, and they pervert the language of rights in order to impose this. And the goal is obvious: it's to normalize this symbol of the subservience of women and this symbol of an extreme right-wing religious fundamentalism, and they want to normalize it. So therefore, the law will affect those religious fanatics who are particularly fanatical, and that includes Islamists. But it will also affect, for example, Sikhs who insist on wearing their turban everywhere and anywhere, even when they're on a job, on Christians who insist on wearing a crucifix, or a Jewish person wearing a kippah or whatever. It applies to all religions. It's just that some people self-select by being particularly aggressive in refusing to take their religious symbols off. I would argue that any person who is so attached, who attaches such importance to their religious identity that they will not even take off an obvious religious symbol when they go to work as a public servant in a public position of authority, then they are a fanatic and a fundamentalist, in my opinion. And I question their qualification for that job. All they have to do is take it off when they go to work. It's a simple thing. It's no big deal. There are plenty of restrictions on all kinds of jobs, and not just jobs, but in all kinds of situations. We all have there are certain dress codes, some of which are explicit, some implicit. For example, there's already a law in Quebec that a civil servant cannot wear partisan political symbols while on the job. This is a good law because it means, for example, you can't wear a T-shirt that says, vote for the PQ or vote for the Liberal Party or vote for whatever when you're on the job as a civil servant. And this is a good thing. And Bill 21 extends this to religious symbols, which are often very political anyway. But it doesn't even extend it to all civil servants, only to those in positions of authority. And there's a grandfather clause so that people who are on the job before the bill was published in March can keep their religious symbols. It's a very minor, that is, it's a very moderate law. It doesn't go very far, but what it does do is good. And the people who are opposed to it have gone ballistic. And there's an awful lot of bullshit around this law. It's really a mild and very fair, mild law.
One of the points of contention is the crucifix in the Quebec National Assembly. I remember having heard something about that being moved.
Well, yes, they when they published the draft legislation in March, they said that if the law is adopted, then that will come down. And when they passed the law, they said it will come down before the at the beginning of the new session, which starts in the autumn, I think. I think they're on a summer recess now. So it's going to come down. And at any rate, crucifixes in Quebec used to be omnipresent. Most of them are down. Most of them were taken away decades ago during the period of secularization of the Quiet Revolution. And there are a few that are left, and this particular one in the National Assembly is particularly prominent and obnoxious because it was put there by a particularly obnoxious premier of Quebec back in the 30s. And so it's got to come down, and secular activists here in Quebec, we've been fighting to have this thing removed, as well as all the other things that we want, including the religious symbols ban. And finally, they're going to take it down at the end of the summer, I think.
You mentioned the Quiet Revolution. What is that?
The Quiet Revolution, for those of you who are Canadians are familiar with the term, it's a reference...
I'm not.
Oh,
I am.
oh, you're Canadian. Okay, well,
But
whatever.
okay,
The Quiet Revolution is what we use to refer to major societal changes that took place within Quebec starting around 1960. So for the last half century, approximately. Before 1960, the Roman Catholic Church was omnipresent. It had an incredible amount of power. There were crucifixes everywhere, and the church controlled the school system and the hospitals and everything. And there was a process where a lot of that was swept out of the way in a very sort of, well, it's called a quiet revolution because it all happened peacefully, and it happened rapidly, and yet without a great deal of upset or without violence, and so this law is sort of it's the extension of the Quiet Revolution. It's secularizing even further. A great deal of secularizing took place already in the last 50 years.
Yeah, and which is a good thing. I understand that most people who identify as Catholic in Quebec are not really, they just do it from a cultural perspective as opposed to,
well, I mean, it's
go to mass.
It's part of the the number of practicing Catholics is very small. The churches are empty, and they used to be full 50 years ago or 60 years ago. So there have been massive changes, and that's what the expression Quiet Revolution refers to. And the school system was secularized.
They changed it to a language-based separate school system.
Right,
yeah.
And they got rid of the old school system after high school and replaced it with public colleges. There's a system of colleges that operate in Quebec between high school and university, junior colleges, you would call them, and those are completely secular. They were only founded about 50 years ago, and it was a massive change in society that happened. The Quebec independence movement also grew up at that time, and it got a lot of influence. And the election of the Parti Québécois was part of that back in '76. And they're all interconnected. So that the issue of Quebec sovereignty is associated with Quebec secularism, even though the two, I mean, theoretically there's no connection. They're totally in separate questions. Mm-hmm. But it's the same. The two issues were on the table at the same time, and opening up a society that had been closed for so long.
Yeah, I'm just looking here at Prime Minister Trudeau's comments on this. He said, "We do not feel it is a government's responsibility or in a government's interest to legislate on what people should be wearing." And of course, you kind of covered that because on their own time, in their personal lives, knock yourself out, wear whatever. And it's... People have I do think people have an expectation that when they're dealing with the government, that they are dealing with somebody who is left their personal beliefs at home and not
exactly
into the workplace.
And this is especially important for teachers.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about, say, for Sikhs or Muslim women. You know, we could argue whether or not it's a free choice.
Well, it doesn't matter if it's a free choice.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it doesn't. In my opinion, it doesn't matter what's going on in the head of the person wearing the symbol. What matters is what the symbol means, and it has meaning, and it's perceived as having meaning, and you the way I express it is there's no such thing as a religious obligation. That is, either a person chooses to adopt some kind of religious behavior, or they're forced to, or there's some combination of the two. If they're forced, then it's an obligation. From other people.
My fault. That's my fault. Anyway,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
If they're forced to do this, then they're being obligated by somebody else, and that means that their freedom of conscience is being denied, and we should stop that. But if it's their own choice, then that means it's a choice. It's not an obligation. There's no such thing as, in the same way that there's no such thing as a God, there's no such thing as an obligation that God makes you do. And so it's either there are women who wear, there are Muslim women, there are many Muslim women who do not wear the veil. There are Muslim people and Muslim women who support Bill 21, and some of them are in the coalition that our organization belongs to. A lot of them are from Algeria. They've seen what Islamists do when they start to get power, and they don't want it to happen here, and they can see it happening slowly here, and it has to be resisted. But a woman who wears the hijab, for example, she can take it off to go to work, and if she refuses to, then she's some kind of a fanatic. She's working for religious fundamentalism, because it's a reasonable thing, and it's a reasonable thing to protect the public that the person will be serving as a public servant in a position of authority, or the children they'll be teaching. They have a duty to present an image that's religiously neutral and not to impose their beliefs, even though they do it passively and they never talk about it. But just the fact of wearing a symbol is too much. All they have to do is take it off when they go to work. And if they're not willing to do that, then there's something wrong with them.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of the hijab and how it's actually being sold. You know, women
being sold is a good way of putting it. Yeah,
fetishized, by brands and become a statement of fashion.
The big problem I have is that on World Hijab Day, what did they think of women who don't wear it? And when you have people like Linda Sarsour coming out and saying that the hijab is empowering and it's modest, empowering, and I can't remember. There's a third term. Anyway,
probably like a symbol of feminism or something.
Yeah, well, yeah. What they're doing is they're saying that women that don't wear it, what are they saying about them? Well, what they're not saying.
Well, they're saying they're sluts. They're saying they're sluts. Basically,
implicitly,
especially a Muslim woman. A woman who wears the veil, the message she's sending is that Muslim women who do not wear the veil are sluts. That's basically
I think it applies to all women. I don't think it's
but especially to other Muslims.
Yeah.
And that's why this law, it doesn't target Muslims, it helps Muslims, because Muslims are the ones who are the most pressured by Islamists in their communities, who are on this campaign to spread the veil and to spread Islamist ideology anywhere and everywhere. And so this helps to protect Muslims against the Islamists and protect everybody else. But it doesn't go very far, but it's a good start.
Do you know Jasmine Mohammed?
No, I don't think I do.
Jasmine Mohammed. She does. She's an ex-Muslim, and she's very hard on feminists who back the wearing of the hijab, which I don't get. I mean, I think it comes from this whole anti-colonialist thinking.
I have a lot I could say on that subject. I think it has a lot to do with intersectional feminism, which I think is the death of feminism. I think it's an anti-enlightenment and a reactionary ideology that is
I take
destroying.
a lot of saying something like that. I despise.
Well, that's the
hit me
conclusion
up.
I've come to.
Yeah,
Well,
oh, no,
this
it
might be a
is.
good segue.
Yeah.
But Jasmine was raised here in Canada and was forced to do all kinds of, that shit stuff, right?
Her
And
husband
obviously
was in
she's speak
ISIS.
converted. Yeah. So,
Well,
very interesting woman.
And
She escaped it.
it's identitarian politics. It's funny because Quebecers who support Bill 21 are denounced as being as engaging in identity politics. There's nothing more identitarian than an Islamist pushing his Islamist identity, and I say his because it's the men who are doing the pushing, but also the women. There's nothing more. There's no identity politics as strong or that could possibly be worse than Islamism. It's identity politics.
It's a motherload of bad
with a few
ideas,
examples.
right? Yeah.
that are
Well,
bad
like
too.
as Sam Harris would say, right? Motherload of bad ideas, and
Yeah.
But it's a huge, of course, it's a hugely horrendous bad idea, but it's also based greatly on identity, and the identitarian left or the regressive left or the postmodern left or the pseudo left or whatever you want to call it. There's a million different labels you could put on it for various reasons. They're obsessed with identity, and they're obsessed with minorities. And so religious minorities get a free ride to a large extent, and Muslims are at the top of the list of religious minorities getting a free ride, but that applies to Islamists much more than to ordinary Muslims,
Right. Yeah,
and it certainly doesn't apply to ex-Muslims.
Yeah.
Well, it's because the Islamists are the ones who claim to speak for all the others, and when you start validating religious identity, it's the ones who are the most pious and fundamentalist and the most practicing are the ones who are going to be the most obvious, and they're going to be advantaged. I mean, when Trudeau visits a Sikh temple, I mean, it's the most.
Whoops.
can't hear you, Dave.
Yeah, we kind of lost him. Huh.
Yeah, copy.
Yeah, I think we kind of lost him.
Let's get him back if we can.
Yeah, send him a text message and see if we can hang up and re-add him,
Okay. Yeah.
and then get back at it.
Sounds good. So you're going to restart a conversation? We lost you. Can we bring you in again? Randy?
We'll have to.
Do we have to restart the call?
No. You'll have to.
Okay, I'm here again.
Oh,
Did
yeah.
did I
Okay.
lose you?
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, we lost you for a moment there. Yeah.
Oh yeah. You're there, David.
Yes, I'm here now.
Oh, there. Okay.
So I don't know if I should continue where I was. I don't know what's the last thing you heard was. So I don't know where to continue.
Go back about a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was simply referring to the fact that it's always the more pious or fundamentalist people in a religious community who get the advantage out of clientelism. Clientelism, like where a politician seeks votes from a particular community. If it's a religious community, it's the orthodox ones that get the attention because they're the most obvious. And so it tends to empower the most backward spokesmen because they're the ones who are the most obvious and they speak for the most fundamentalist or practicing. And the sort of average Joe doesn't. They don't get the same say.
Yeah, I think it's part of Canadian culture to apologize and be sorry and blah blah blah. Like, so what do you think of the word Islamophobia? I think it's hard to explain to people.
It's the blasphemy of the 21st century.
Yeah,
Except that in a way it's worse than blasphemy in the sense that it focuses on one single religion, which currently happens to be extremely virulent, and so it gives an enormous privilege to one religion over others. At least when there was blasphemy legislation, it was supposed to apply to all religions, even though I'm sure they were thinking of Christianity first when they passed that law.
Yeah.
Of course.
but at least it could be applied to any religion, whereas Islamophobia is a privilege. The use of accusations of Islamophobia are completely unacceptable, in my opinion. It should never be used as an accusation. It's an accusation of blasphemy against Islam. It's promoted by Islamists in order to censor in an extra legal way any criticism of Islam or Islamism. And by extra legal, I mean by fear of being accused of Islamophobia or racism or xenophobia or the related accusation.
Well, essentially, it is a blasphemy. Yeah, that's what you said. Yeah.
It's the blasphemy of the 21st century, and we need to fight against it in the same way that we fought against paragraph, 296 in the Canadian Criminal Code, which recently was repealed, which is very good news. But at the same time, they adopted this stupid motion M103, which fortunately does not have force of law, but it's a really bad precedent. And there's a similar motion that was adopted in the Quebec National Assembly a few years earlier. And these should be formally repudiated. These are bad things, and there are some people who think that, or they claim that making pronouncements against Islamophobia will help to reduce anti-Muslim violence. I think the very opposite is true, because it increases social tension, because you're not allowing people to criticize an ideology that should be criticized, and so you're putting a lid on something which is not only harmless but is actually good. You're putting a lid on good, legitimate criticism, and the result may be violence, and it's not going to make the situation any better. It can only make it worse, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the most harsh criticism comes from ex-Muslims and moderate Muslims too, and they often get called horrible names and things I can't even repeat.
Well, that's what happens when you
that's a regressive left,
a traitor to your own group.
But sometimes they get accused of those horrible sins by people who are not themselves Muslims, who are regressive leftists, who are atheists or Christians or whatever.
I think to speak on behalf of groups they don't even represent and aren't even a part of.
Asked to represent.
Yeah.
But I think it's okay for everybody to have an opinion about everything. I do not subscribe to this idea that you have to belong to a group to have an opinion about it. Okay, that's a regressive left idea. It helps if you know what you're talking about. So, okay, but you can be an outsider, and if you're well informed, you have a right to an opinion. Regressive leftists, or I'm not sure that's the correct term to use, but the people we're talking about, these people who ascribe to intersectional identity politics, they have a highly non-critical attitude towards Islam, and they're very dogmatic, and they're very Manichaean. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Everything's black and white, and you're either with us or against us. And if you say anything I don't like, you're a Nazi, and
and you should be punched.
Well, and I think it's worth reminding listeners that it was Majid Nawaz who came up with the term regressive left. It wasn't, some white person, because
an ex-Muslim or a Muslim, a moderate Muslim.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people who don't like the expression moderate Muslim, because they're of the opinion that all Islam is bad, and they have a point, but nevertheless, there's a lot of different kinds of Muslims. I mean, there are moderate Muslims. I'm not sure there's such a thing as moderate Islam, but there are moderate Muslims.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are secular Muslims.
I always say that how one communicates to potential, I guess, convertees or whatever you want to call them. Some people get the cognitive slap right upside the head, like Richard Dawkins might deliver, and some people, it's the slow erosion of their beliefs, right? So I think all voices have a place in that conversation, and I just see Majid as being, like a part of that conversation, absolutely, right? Anti-terrorism, and I'm sorry I can't remember the name of his organization, but he's on board.
Quillen?
Yeah. Yes, it is. No. Is it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Not to be confused with Quillet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just
also
thinking.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna move into some of these other stories. If you want to stick around.
Well, just before we leave the topic, can I recommend a couple of articles?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Although, I can't share links if this is all. Do you have
can you send me the links on Skype? I'll put them.
Yeah, we'll post them after the.
Okay. Well, here is an excellent article. I'll send you on Skype, the link on Skype, which is in. Just a minute. I need to get back to text. Okay, this is on the website of, I think, the American Humanist Association. Thehumanist.com, that's the AHA, isn't it?
Is it? Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Well, that's an article. That's an article on the AHA website, and it's excellent.
Okay.
There's no lack of really bad articles about Bill 21. There's so many of them. And also I would encourage you to take a look at my personal blog. Here's an article from my personal blog. Quebec Bill 21 causes earthquakes, anal warts, and the collapse of civilization.
Yes,
and
the hyperbole is strong, isn't it?
And I would also, final link, I would encourage you to visit the website of the organization Atheist Free Thinkers that I work with, and here is the link to the website of Atheist Free Thinkers. So there's 3 links for you.
Okay, I brought them all up. So there. Hey, yeah, good. I got them up.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, guys, we'll just continue on with the regressive left, I think, because we're already there. This is something from TU Eindhoven, which is in the Netherlands, and this is just a Twitter tweet they put out. To achieve a better gender balance, we will be opening up all vacancies for permanent academic staff exclusively to women in the first 6 months of recruitment. Interesting. And somebody said, how is that even legal? And they responded, thank you for your message. Positive discrimination, I'm not making this up, like this is not against the law in the Netherlands. In fact, it is motivated by the Dutch government.
Well, that's quite possible.
Yeah, I don't doubt it, but positive discrimination.
Well, it's the same as affirmative action, right?
Yeah.
It's basically the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is. There was I think it was Concordia University had something similar, and they cited Section 21 of the Human Rights Code. But if you read that, all it does is say that marginalized, people from marginalized groups, you can give them a leg up. Doesn't mean you can hire them exclusively. It's interesting interpretation of the law. I'm wondering if that's the same here, but I just wanted to mention this before I got on my own rant, because of, women's soccer is supposedly to be, paid, players they want to be paid the same as men, but and the arguments that I've all heard are just so bad. That the women's team, the U.S. women's team, does really well. Well, that means they'll get more prize money because as they advance in the tournament at the World Cup, Women's World Cup, they'll get more money. So that's already built into that. But nobody ever mentions revenue streams, which is the only thing that matters in the sports and entertainment industry. You have...
Yeah, it's an industry. It's a...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is an industry. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you have how many people you can put into seats, how much of each of those seats is worth. That leads to advertising dollars and eventually to television contracts, that kind of thing. The women's organization version of FIFA is not as rich as the men's, and it's not as well attended. The games are there is a women's professional soccer league in North America, believe it or not. Have you heard of it? Because I haven't.
I haven't even heard
I know
of
it exists. I know it exists. But
yeah, okay.
MLS.
I know now. Now I know too.
Oh, there you go. I don't even know what it's called, but I did look up what
I'm just not a sports
the average
person,
attendance
so, yeah.
was. If you look at the average attendance of MLS, which is the North American Soccer League, it's 28,000 per game. In the women's, it's less than 5,000. So you might...
Well, it's all about advertising revenue, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing, and you don't get big advertising contracts if you're only putting 5,000 people in seats and don't have any television contracts.
Yeah.
So the revenue streams, orders of magnitude difference, and but people say, well, equal pay for equal work, and it's like, that doesn't exist in the sports and entertainment industry. I mean, just think about that. I try to play the guitar. Imagine I got hired by a bar to play, and I demand...
Well, I've heard you sing Bohemian Rhapsody, and you're pretty fucking good.
That's singing, not guitar. You haven't not heard me play guitar and never will.
Okay.
If I go to a bar and demand that I get paid the same as Madonna when she plays the Saddle Dome, I'm going to be laughed at, and even more so if I then proclaim sexism as is the cause. Equal pay for equal work does not exist. It's not a 9-to-5 job. It doesn't even exist in 9-to-5 jobs. I mean, you look at how much the agriculture sector pays for the same job as the oil and gas sector. It's oil and gas pays quite a bit more for the exact same job.
Well, and non-profit organizations and stuff like that.
Now that's at the very bottom.
Well, yeah, but you see people doing good work for not much pay that probably could go to other industries and flourish.
Yeah, I mean, you want to attract the best people. You pay them what you can afford to. And oil and gas, well, maybe not so much lately, but it historically has paid a lot more than even the second biggest, which is agriculture. Anyway, there's my rant for the day. Okay. I don't know, anybody wants to have a say on this?
I bet is pharma not up there too, I'd imagine?
We don't have much of a pharma industry here.
In Alberta?
Yeah.
We have a bit.
It's probably a very minor sector.
Okay.
I wouldn't think it's a huge one.
David, are you still there?
I'm still here. Are you referring to farming or pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, she's referring to pharmaceutical. Yeah.
Pharmaceuticals are big in the Montreal area, but I don't know much about them. Yeah, I don't know much about them.
Much bigger in Montreal.
Yeah.
Montreal, Mississauga.
But they have a presence here for sure. They're
Oh, they might have a presence here, but like sales offices. There's not really developers out here. I could be wrong, but
I've done some graphic design work that would suggest that there's somewhat of an industry here for sure. And agriculture and pharmacy almost crosses paths in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, veterinarian, I guess. That's true.
Well, I'm thinking a few years ago I did an AGM presentation for a company that was growing marijuana here in Alberta. and they're a pharmaceutical company, right? So where's that line between agriculture and, pharmaceuticals in that sense, I guess, if that makes sense.
Well, nowadays I think that is agriculture.
Yeah.
That's a long way from your average family farm. Your typical family farm.
Well, the security around those facilities is pretty high. But
yeah.
I wanted to say a few more things about that Oberlin thing in the United States. Have you heard of this one, David? The Oberlin
Yes,
College?
I have. I have heard of it, yes.
It just amazes me that, there's a really good article in The Atlantic. I'm going to read here. On November 9th, 2016, 3 black students at Oberlin College made a late afternoon trip to Gibson's Bakery, a small family-owned business near campus that has been serving the community at its present location since 1905. Actually, I think it's 1885, but anyway. Like countless undergraduates of all races, classes, genders, and generations, they hoped to leave with alcohol, but weren't yet of age to purchase it legally, which is absolutely ridiculous. Come on, Americans. 21, you can vote, you can go to war, but you can't drink booze.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Is that a national law or just in that state?
That's a federal law. Well,
21?
It's not a federal law, but you have to comply with it in order, there's funding issues if you don't comply with that. So technically it's a state law, but really it's federal. In the moments that followed, Alan Gibson, the owner's son, would try to keep the fake ID, pursue the male student who had used it as he fled to the back of the store, chase him into the street yelling shoplifter, and detain him even as the other students, who were both women, attempted to intervene on behalf of their friend. Soon, Oberlin police arrived and arrested the 3 undergraduates. A police report accused them of trying to shoplift 2 bottles of wine. Many classmates jumped to the conclusion that they'd been mistreated and launched protests almost immediately. In other words, they didn't wait for any evidence before reaching for the race card. Chants of "no justice, no peace" reverberated across campus from early morning into late last night as hundreds of protesters lined West College Street calling for a boycott of Gibson's Bakery, the student newspaper reported. According to a flyer distributed by protesters, this incident was far from Gibson's first instance of alleged racial bias. The same article quoted a black employee of the store who dismissed racism as a motive. If you're caught shoplifting, you're going to end up getting arrested. Well, shock and surprise. When you steal from the store, it doesn't matter what color you are. You can be purple, blue, green. If you steal, you get caught, you get arrested. And they didn't wait at all to reach for the race card. And it's really difficult to believe that Oberlin College professors didn't facilitate this. All the organization.
According to the recording, yeah.
And there was that email from there was one professor from the drama college or drama department who said, maybe just slow down here for a minute. And the person that was really high up, like second to the president, I think, in an email said, "Fuck him." I'd unleash the students on him if we didn't need to leave this behind us. I mean, so it's pretty easy to.
I think the justification that they used was they were facilitating students' free speech. But
defaming speech is.
Should you promote and what should you not? And who the hell are you to be a gatekeeper of what knowledge is, or opinions are out there, right?
Don't be fooled for a second that the professors themselves are enabling this. As they have so many others. So go ahead, David.
Well, I just have 2 observations. I've heard of several incidents like this, and they have the 2 things in common, it would appear. One is the administration is afraid of the students, and they basically kowtow to them.
Yeah.
Or for whatever, if they're afraid. I mean, I don't know if it's because they're afraid or for some others, but they capitulate to the fanatical behavior of some students. And the other thing is a total disrespect for due process, or the concept that somebody might be innocent you require some degree of investigation and proof before convicting somebody of a crime or a misdemeanor or whatever, and it's like they just jump to conclusions. It's their black and white mentality that if you're not with us, you're a Nazi kind of thing.
The court of public opinion.
Yeah,
right?
Well, yeah,
and it's a kangaroo. It's a kangaroo court.
Yeah.
Yeah, they reach straight for the least charitable interpretation of events. That's the common denominator in all of this. They just go straight.
Yeah.
Okay, the optics say
too,
racism
and
must
just-
be that.
Just shitty media, like really bad media,
Well,
without
especially
fact
BuzzFeed.
checking, without. Don't get me started. No fact. It's not even reporting anymore. It's news is presented as public opinion without expressing the fact that it's personal opinion, as opposed to just saying, hey, this is an opinion piece. It gets presented as news, and then claims get perpetuated as truth when they're not.
Well,
what's that
this
saying?
is exactly what happens with if we get Bill 21 in Quebec, the English language media, and to some extent the French language media as well, are extremely prejudiced against secularism, and that's the only point of view they express as a general rule. And it's like demonization, like accusations, the usual racism, xenophobia, whatever. And in the case of Bill 21, they're capitulating to Islamists, basically. Whereas in this example, this has nothing to do with Islam, but they're capitulating to the racialist pseudo-left. I call them racialist because they see race everywhere, and they see racism everywhere.
I know people that do that. It's they didn't wait for any real information. Oberlin College, they have a college, a newspaper, and this is just precious. They just put out an editorial. This is just a part of it. This is another take on it, but anyway. Oberlin College's student newspaper editorial board blasted national media coverage of the Gibson's bakery trial, saying that it misses the mark and that the ruling is part of an increasingly authoritarian country. What?
Well, they didn't like the decision, so...
Yeah, no.
Well,
kidding.
they didn't like the decision, so it must be a racist decision, I guess, or an authoritarian decision, or whatever,
But here's the funny part: they're framing this as an attack on their free speech. Defaming speech is not protected. Okay.
Yeah.
If you defame someone personally, yes.
Protected. Yeah. So,
Slander, right?
Yeah.
Slander and libel.
But if you call somebody racist without proving it in any way, that's a form of slander.
Yeah.
That's a form of slander, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, racism is not a crime, or maybe sometimes it is.
Yeah. No, it doesn't fall under criminal law. It falls under civil law, and
yeah, okay.
and which has, by the way, in the current case, Gibson's it's a lower burden of proof to find Oberlin College guilty than it would be in a criminal trial.
Right, right.
But yeah, there's no question that the students were using slander and defaming speech, and in fact, it came out after they looked at the demographics of previous incidents where somebody had been arrested for shoplifting, and it echoed the demographics of the college. So it was there was no racism at all in this.
So they were the bakery was an equal opportunity arrestor.
Yeah, that's it wasn't a big sample, but it was enough to demonstrate that they were not targeting any particular group.
Right.
And even after that, they kept going. And the college, like you were talking about, the tail wagging the dog. The college was afraid of students throwing Gibson's bakery food to the floor. And that's why they
potentially ruining a.
That's why they canceled the contract with Gibson's Bakery, which is like, that makes no sense. It's you're worried about what the students will do. Why don't you, if they do something like that, deal with the students' behavior? If they're going to act like they're in a nursery school, and the word nursery school did come up in this context, it doesn't make sense. They're so desperate to get the respect of the students that the students are just running things. And I don't know if they're afraid of them so much as just this pathological need to have the students accept the administration. I don't know, it's just weird.
Well, I think there is a fear aspect, and the fear is the fear of being slandered. That's what fear of being labeled a racist or xenophobia or whatever.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
that's part of it. That's almost certainly part of it, but that may not be the whole story.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, I think, that, individuals weren't sued as opposed to an institution, right? And I'm sure, the fact that you can't really get money out of individuals might have something to do with that too. Well, I shouldn't say that, because it was obviously on principle. The bakery had been defamed, and I think it was a just decision. Whoppingly high, what do you call it, financial compensation, I guess, but...
Well, I assume that the bakery lost a great deal of money because of this. Lost a lot of clientele and business and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They struggled, but they're not going to struggle anymore unless Oberlin appeals the decision. We don't know whether they will do that yet or not. But,
that would be ridiculous.
Well, I'm sure they would, but I mean, to frame this as a free speech issue is ridiculous. That's just...
Yeah.
But also the so-called regressive left has a very dubious affair with the whole concept of free speech, because they tend to say that free speech is an issue that the far right promotes for their own nefarious purposes.
Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah. They're for free speech when it serves their purposes, I guess.
Oh yeah.
And
otherwise, words are violence, right?
Yeah. So if somebody who's a right winger uses free speech to say things they don't like, then they're against free speech.
Yeah.
And by the way, it could be a moderate right winger, and they'll accuse them of being extreme right. Of course, they do. There's no distinction.
Well, the people
and so. When I read something in any large mainstream media, newspaper, television, whatever, whenever I hear somebody labeling a group or a person as being of extreme right, I immediately am skeptical. I don't believe them anymore, because they may be, but they may not be. They may be center or a little center right, moderately right, or they might be extreme right, but we don't know, because I don't trust anybody anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I'm thinking of some YouTubers that have been accused of being alt-right that just aren't,
Like Sam Harris, What the
yeah.
Or he's a gateway to the alt-right, whatever the hell that is.
Yeah. It's like a gateway drug. It's silly. It's absolutely silly. Well, there was that piece that was written by, oh gosh, I can't remember his name. Oh, it's a pseudonym, but anyway, Godfrey. Basically, it was a piece that they sent in, being a YouTuber, and I was radicalized by YouTube videos, and they published it as an indictment against the right on YouTube, but the whole thing was a hoax. But they bought it.
Yeah.
Oh. I thought it was just an exaggeration.
Yeah. Well, the writers thought so, but they thought, I wonder if they'll buy this. Sure enough, they lapped it all up.
Well, it reminds me of Sokol Squared, I'm sorry, Peter Boghossian, and I'm sorry, I can't remember his colleague's name, that talked about
James Lindsay and
grievance. Yeah, grievance studies.
Sure.
Right? That term in and of itself caused, lots of conversation, shall we say.
Grievance studies is a perfect word for it because that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
How about whining studies?
There's that too.
No.
Or ideology incubators is actually not a bad term for them because that's what they are.
Well, I what some people call political correctness, I call ideological puritanism.
Yeah.
It describes it more accurately.
We're coming. This is what happens when you violate dogma. All right. What's his name? I can't remember his name. Coleman Hughes. He writes for Colette and a few other things, and he was in front of the U.S. Congress talking about reparations for slavery, and he is quite against them because there was a time for reparations. This is not the time. I mean, there's nobody alive today that was a victim, and not to say that there weren't horrible things that happened then and horrible things that continue to happen, but we should be concentrating on the problems of today. And he knew he was going to get take a hit for this. He actually even said so in his talk. And of course, sure enough, HBO writer and comedian calls black columnist a coon for opposing reparations. This is.
And you know what? On my take,
coon is a racist slur.
Absolutely.
Is it not?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But on my take, I don't understand why what he was proposing, which is to put money back into communities, is not similar to reparations, right? If you have a community in need,
because
and they need to,
that money could be targeted to improving the neighborhood rather than giving it to individuals.
Yes. That sounds like a reasonable thing to do.
It sounds perfectly
help communities.
reasonable to me too.
Well, I think reparations are nothing weird to Canadians. We've been doing this for a long time to First Nations communities and that kind of thing, right? So I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think that if people want to be, individually granted those benefits, then
you mean compensated, but they're being compensated for something that didn't happen to them.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a problem.
Yeah.
So
Well, if you compare to Canada, the residential school system is much more recent than slavery. So the two are different situations.
Too. Yeah.
I mean, there are people still alive, many people still alive who went through the residential school system. Many. Yeah. Whereas there are no ex-slaves left. But the consequences of slavery are there in the communities.
Yeah. And so that.
So I just don't think reparations necessarily means targeting individuals with money. I think it can be interpreted more broadly, like that columnist did.
Yeah.
That's not anti-reparations. It's just saying, we can still put money into something that will help, right?
Yeah.
But he was opposing compensation directly to individuals. That's what he was opposing, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
I agree, but I just don't see why reparations can't be considered as part of a more holistic solution that he was suggesting, as opposed to paying out individuals, right?
Yeah, because he said he does. I don't need the money. I grew up in an affluent neighborhood. That's not. What am I going to do with it? It's not repairing anything in my life. And so he wants it to go to neighborhoods that are struggling. But I also believe that if you throw money at a problem, nothing gets done. So it has to be something that is an actual benefit.
Well, you need to throw it very accurately and carefully.
Yes.
Yeah.
And planned. It's got to be planned. Right. But this guy, this HBO writer, Coleman Hughes, that's what it is, Charlton Hughes. Coleman Hughes. This guy, Ray Sandy, who writes for something I've never seen, a Black Lady sketch show. I've never heard of it. He goes on into a torrent of racist abuse on Twitter. It's okay, just for today, to call Coleman Hughes a coon. No, it's not.
It's terrible.
He's
That's
arguing
awful.
against reparations on Juneteenth. He's cooning Hughes till midnight Pacific Standard Time. Really?
Wow.
Really, dude? What a douche.
So,
Same kind of, rhetoric that Majid Nawaz himself has been exposed to. Faisal, who's been on our show, lots of people that dare
And
dissent,
and ex-Muslims have been exposed to.
Yeah. Here's a good news story, though. I love this. William Shatner shuts down Star Trek podcast host who wished he was dead. Here's another social justice person, wonderful, I'm sure, tweeted out, hot take, I wish the real Nimoy was alive rather than Shatner. Oh, I just love you already.
Why do so many people have such a hatred for Shatner?
I
He's
don't
just
know.
charming Canadian.
Well, I think he has criticized social justice warriors.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, well,
And I don't know the details, but I suspect I would agree with his criticism. I call them social justice bimbos.
I just think he's got a sense of humor about himself, and he's cool. But I like him. And this
so
doesn't.
So apparently there was a big backlash from this, and she continued further. This Heather Ray person, who, by the way, she's on a podcast about Star Trek, and then she does this. I don't know, what a shit human. If you would all believe I deserve the abuse directed at me because of this tweet, please unfollow me. Well, I'll follow you just to unfollow you. Okay, how's that? It's truly amazing what you think is a death threat. It's not. Okay, she's right. It wasn't a death threat. She just wished him dead. That makes it all better.
It was just a very mean-spirited thing to say.
Oh, totally.
For no reason. Yeah.
I simply wish that the better person who believed in equality was the one still with us. I won't apologize for that. And of course.
And does Shatner not believe in equality?
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Gene Roddenberry, humanist.
Yeah, no kidding.
Need to say more, right?
So, and then another one of the podcast hosts comes on and introduces identity politics into this whole thing. So she tweets, the cis-het white male privilege exhibited by William Shatner by turning his fan base against a member of the queer Star Trek community. Okay, first of all, he didn't do that, and second, nobody knew this person was queer before this. Over a flippant, I love this, a flippant and forgettable opinion is absolutely shameful. I'm sorry, you're the victim here? How fragile his ego must be that a random person can upset him so. And of course, the original tweeter's account is now privileged. So, I mean, it's protected. So she's the one whose ego got
How do you mean protected?
Well, it only...
She gets plain victimhood.
Well, yeah.
Shatner's a old white guy.
She gets
right? You mean you're speaking virtually? Okay, I thought Okay, I thought you meant some kind of policy on the part of Twitter that protected her or something.
Yeah.
Playing the victim, that's a familiar theme.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They turned it around and they're the victim. And the podcast, I will not name them because they don't deserve it, tweeted, we harbor no ill will for William Shatner, only appreciation and love for his work. The creator of the tweet has, I love this, chosen to step away from the network, and we are all deeply saddened that this has happened. The remark was not intended as a threat or to promote harm to anyone. This person just wished him dead. Anyway. And although her
The
account
person is
has been made private, she has accepted responsibility for the poor wording, has deleted the tweet, and regrets having made it. Oh, I'm sure she has. She was made to regret it, that's for sure. Ugh. Yeah, this is something else. This is just something else.
Yeah, I love this last
William
tweet.
Shatner says, deeply saddened by that someone who has a history of saying she wishes I was dead has left your organization, but you have no ill will? Is that a backhanded slam at me? You should have removed her immediately, but instead you allowed another of your crew to attack as well? Wow. Anyone who uses the Star Trek name in a podcast or any fan production should be inclusive, not exclusive, and to hurl hatred for poorly worded tweets should be disallowed from using any reference to Star Trek in marketing their show. Good for them.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It's a brand. Yeah. Carry on. There's yet more.
What a...
Go back a bit.
Sorry. You want to go back to which one?
This isn't the first time she's posted it since. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my glasses.
She's a cheerleader at SJW.
Oh, yeah, okay.
She also did several Star Trek podcasts. What is it about Jean's inclusionary vision that missed her by miles that she could post that? Stop trying to make this about me unless you feel the same way as her.
Nailed it.
I'm true. Well, this one person, this was a reply to one person who said, I'm truly ashamed of your behavior, Mr. Shatner. You've made the internet bully a person based on what you assume she meant. Did you bother to... I think we know what she meant.
Yeah, no shit.
For crying out loud.
Wow.
It's kind of obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys aren't the victims here. And so neither one of these two people are associated with the podcast. Yay! Victory! Somebody got their comeuppance. My goodness.
Yep.
But you see the whole narrative switch, right? Oh, I'm the victim here because I'm a XYZ demographic.
Because I threatened, well, she didn't threaten it, but, wishing somebody dead is...
Wishing somebody dead.
That's good social discourse.
And at the risk of repeating myself, that's exactly what Islamists do, play the victim.
Oh, yeah.
And they turn things around, and privileges become rights, and people who resist their efforts become the bad guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love how...
It's a common theme.
Legislation supporting the shit, which is shocking. Yeah.
I'd like to see the evidence that William Shatner got the internet to bully this person, because it's people that followed William Shatner realized this was a shit human being and deserved to know.
Yeah.
There you go. And now you're no longer doing that podcast. Good. There's got to be accountability, right?
That's what they say, free speech has consequences, and it works both ways.
Not free from consequences.
Yeah. Kindly excuse me for a moment. I shall be back.
Sure. Good. This is funny. 20,000 Christians signed a letter trying to get Netflix to drop Good Omens, the Terry Pratchett novel adaptation. And the problem is, it's not a Netflix show. And so they they blame Netflix for something Amazon made, which, by the way, I've binge watched it. It's better than the book. I wasn't a huge fan of the novel, but the TV show version of it on Amazon Prime, starring Michael Sheen and David Tennant, who was an ex-Doctor Who, is really good. So, but what was it doesn't have the tweets. I'll just describe the tweets. So Netflix tweeted out after this saying that they would indeed cancel Good Omens, even though, of course, they had nothing to do with it. And they said they promised that they would... actually, this is what they said. They said they'd promise to never make any more.
Easy promise to keep.
So Amazon tweets back, "What? You're going to cancel Good Omens? So we're going to cancel Stranger Things," which of course is a Netflix thing.
Oh, okay.
So they had this little bit of banter back and forth between Netflix and Amazon. I think the creators of Good Omens should be writing 20,000 thank you letters to every single person who signed on, because it got me to watch it.
And why did the Christians not like the show? Because it shows an angel and a demon collaborating?
Well, I'm sure they feel it's blasphemous. It's a lot, the usual yada yada yada. They tried to do the same thing with Lucifer. That was on network television until it was canceled and Netflix picked it up. And actually, it was, in my estimation, 10 times better than it ever was on network TV in the Netflix version. So it's they tried to do that. What other thing? Oh, The Last Temptation of Christ. Remember that?
Yes.
Same thing, and it's just free advertising. They never.
Yeah, really.
They never learn.
Well, fortunately, Christians don't have quite as much power as they used to, but if they did, they'd be dangerous. They're
absolutely.
They're perhaps not as dangerous as Islamists currently, but they could become more dangerous again, and they're still very powerful in the United States and in some African countries and
all over Africa.
In Eastern Europe. The Christian extreme right still exists, and
I mean, even Randy, you and I are, you especially are critical of. I mean, we have this education system and healthcare system where Catholic hospitals the Catholic Church just gets a free pass on doing really, really harmful things, right? Yeah. Really awful things. Yeah. Undermining the right to die with dignity, try to undermine gay straight alliances in schools, and here we've got Kennedy here, right? Yeah. So
I assume they make abortions harder to get, do they?
Not yet. I haven't heard anything about.
Really certainly they'd like to.
Yeah, we have that.
Well, I guess you can't petition within a certain range of these clinics, and that kind of thing, right?
Oh, good.
Yeah, we have the bubble.
So they can do it across the street,
it's
but
still in effect, I think. But don't count on it being there in 4 years.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I don't know when they're going to do it, but they've already torn apart.
I don't think they'll get away with that.
The gay therapy, the gay conversion therapy.
That ridiculous.
Was doing recommendations for a law that would ban it. Why didn't they just ban it? They should have just banned them.
Well, bloody hell. Yeah. I think in Ontario it is banned, right? But still, it happens anyway.
Yeah.
From what I understand, we're going to talk about this article, but it seems to me it was banned in 2005, gay conversion therapy.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I tried to get Sheldon Helms on last minute again, and thank you, Dave, so much for being able to be here for us last minute. But he wasn't available, but he's a very outspoken critic of gay conversion therapy, and it's shocking. He just posted something from the National, I believe it was, about... do we even have this on our list? Probably not.
No, we don't.
But it was an Ontario... what do you call it? Like a Freudian therapist who was abusing the privilege and engaging in acts to supposedly convert people to being straight, and
that
ridiculous.
Yeah. One of the evils of Christianity is telling people that they are a bad person for who they are.
But he wasn't even framing it in a religious kind of defense. He was just like, this is, I asked these young men not to say anything because this is such an alternative therapy and blah, blah, blah. And then, finally, a few of them found out that there were others like them that had been exploited in this way. And, wow. Yeah. Still with us, Steven?
Yeah, the religious have often learned that they need to phrase their dogma in pseudoscientific or in
Secular.
scientific scientific sounding jargon. They call it therapy, and when it's really kind of an exorcism.
Well, when you invoke Freud, you can pretty much get away with,
I don't know. I thought
So,
Freud was
cigar is
pretty
just
much
cigar.
pretty much everything
Freud's-
Freud did is gone from.
Freud has been greatly debunked in the last while. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gender stereotypes have been banned from British ads. Oh. Really?
How do you even do? There's some stuff I haven't actually caught on to read, but yeah,
I
this
don't
is.
have a problem with having commercials depicting non-stereotypical gender roles. That doesn't bother me. But banning the stereotypes does. I mean, things are stereotypes exist for a reason. Generally, sometimes they're not accurate, but more often than not, they are reasonably accurate in terms of if you look at population statistics. I can't say it. I'm just going to say stats. It's easier. If you're looking at who the caregiver is in the family, that's still generally speaking, it's women. Even in families that share the duties, they're not shared equally.
That's true, and that's a feminist argument,
But also, I think to label something as a gender stereotype is impossible without context. I mean, if all ads show women as cleaning the house and cooking meals all the time, obviously you've got a gender stereotype. But if half of them show women doing it and the other half show men doing it, then the half that show women are no longer stereotypes because the context has changed. So how can you say?
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
I think the point is to have a mixture, and to have show both men and women in a diversity of roles.
Not to ban the stereotype.
And if you ban one, then the other one becomes a new stereotype. It would seem to me.
That's exactly. I was just going to say it kind of undercuts the fact that it's a stereotype by promoting it as a stereotype, right? Like, I'm not sure how to phrase it, but I think we're on the same page there, right?
Yeah, I think you need variety. That's
Yeah.
And that would be a better way of doing this rather than just straight out banning the stereotype.
Yeah.
But they've been banning strange things like what they call unrealistic female models. In swimsuit ads. For.
Okay. Yeah. Body shaming kind of thing. Yeah.
No, I don't think it's body shaming.
Well, people perceive. I'm thinking that
perceive things any way they choose. I really couldn't care less.
But if they never show certain body types, you could consider that as perhaps insulting for those body types. But if they show a variety, then that solves the problem. It would seem to me.
Well, sort of, but from a marketing perspective, it's not as effective as if you're using a model that has the perfect body.
Yeah, like that one ad. I think it was in the UK. Be beach body ready or whatever kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
But isn't there a marketing advantage to showing other body types? Like if you're trying to sell a product to people of all body types, isn't there an advantage to showing some who are not perfect? No? I mean, because the people can relate to the person in the ad.
You're not.
You'd think so,
you're not
but
just selling the clothes.
You're selling a dream as well as a product.
I see.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you can have this perfect body if you buy X product, right?
So buy our widget and you'll look like Emma Stone or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Buy our whatever product and you'll look really
they're
sexy.
They're selling. They're more than just the clothes. They're implying that the clothes will get you there. Of course, it's not true.
Or
Or not necessarily true.
It's not about truth. It's about persuasion, as many things in life are, right?
Yeah.
Nothing to do with truth or reality. It's all about persuading people to buy a product or to, motivate them to act in certain ways, behave in certain ways. So, entirely uncoupled from the truth.
Yes. Well, Victoria in Australia, totally changing the topic now. They've enacted medical assistance in dying law, and the health minister came out and said something fairly reasonable, that euthanasia laws will offer dying patients comfort, and that goes for people who do seek it. It also goes for those who may, in the end, not seek it. And, it's
knowing it's an alternative.
They know that there's an exit. What's the soft landing kind of thing? It's no soft exit, I guess. Kind of what you call it.
Well, being able to control the outcome of your life is what it really boils down to. Sure. If you don't want to die with dignity or whatever,
Yeah, it gives you that measure of control, and it's real control because if you don't want it, you don't look for it.
Yeah,
it's a form of self-determination.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
But you go over to New Zealand, and 1,000 doctors there have signed a letter against euthanasia. So there's a bit of progress in Australia, but the Kiwis are going back. I mean, it's the same old tired arguments. Here's a quote. From the letter, we believe that crossing the line to intentionally assist a person to die would fundamentally weaken the doctor-patient relationship, which is based on trust and respect. I disagree, I think.
Well, I trust and respect that my doctor will, knowing my wish. Yeah, exactly. That's a trust and respect. Not that they're going to keep me alive if I'm not in a position that I want to be there anymore. That I'm suffering, or I'm not myself anymore.
Especially if you've given instructions.
Yeah, exactly.
Before.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't have an advanced directive yet. The letter
it's important to let family members and friends know your wishes, just in case there's any, dispute. Let your family know what your wishes are.
You said 1,000 doctors signed this letter in Australia, in the state of Victoria?
New Zealand. No, this is New Zealand.
This is New Zealand. Oh, I see. But there must be many doctors who disagree with that. I mean, have they expressed themselves in some way?
I talked to a Canadian doctor, but I just want to read this last little bit from the letter. The usual slippery slope argument. We are especially concerned with protecting vulnerable people who can feel they have become a burden to others, and we are committed to supporting those who find their own life situations a heavy burden. Doctors are not necessary in the regulation or practice of assisted suicide. Yes, they are. They are included only to provide a cloak of medical legitimacy. But anyway, they go on to talk about a Canadian doctor who has herself taken part in champagne parties before administering the drugs which ended people's lives. Dr. Stephanie Green, she's personally euthanized 150 people since Canada legalized assisted dying in 2016, has been brought to New Zealand by the End of Life Choice Society. That sounds like an organization worth getting behind. So they have, apparently they have a bill for medical assistance in dying has passed its first reading in 2017, but MPs opposing the bill predict a dramatically tighter margin of less than 5 votes on the second reading. Well, maybe, but pass is a pass. So they're having a second reading. Why would there be such a big difference between the first and second readings? I don't understand.
Yeah.
In terms of the vote, it's it's going to happen, folks. This is something that actually is progress. It's progressive in a real way, not like this thing here. a gender-neutral menstrual cup. Seriously, is there?
Identifies as
Interesting.
identifies as bleeding. That means these two people are menstruating, even as we speak.
Who knows
Or-
anymore?
A gender-neutral menstrual cup.
What they?
What do they mean by cup?
Well, I guess like that, the diva thing that you, it's essentially a cup that collects your period blood, as opposed to, alternatives like a tampon or whatever, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
I think.
apparently, gender-neutral.
How can menstruation be gender neutral? Oh, okay.
I think it'd be gender neutral, but I think, biological sex.
Gender being distinct from sex.
Oh
yeah.
no, you
Okay.
oppressive shitlord! You just
Well-
violated dogma.
Oh no.
You're
Here, I need
they're-
protection. Look.
What was the blasphemous statement you just made?
Yeah, well, she was saying that biological sex is the determinant.
Distinct from
here.
gender, right?
Yeah,
Well,
that's-
Well,
that's-
I think
that's evil.
that's isn't that a fact?
No. There's no such thing as
What
facts.
did I just say, Dave? Facts don't matter. I've got a
Okay.
giant dog.
Well, yes, I figured that out. Facts don't matter. That's it.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I had to bring that in there because I thought I don't really want to talk about that one much, but I had to show that because it's just silly. Catholic Church restates staunch opposition to voluntary assisted dying laws. Back in Australia again, so they're complaining about the new law in Victoria. Catholic.
Does anybody think the Catholic Church still has any kind of moral authority?
Oh, don't get me started. I could just. Well, and
are
I
you
think
still
people
Catholic?
are becoming increasingly embarrassed to identify with it.
I
Right?
think
I think in my circle, it's like, I'm Catholic, but. Right?
Catholic is an immoral act. I really believe that.
Yeah,
I believe it is an immoral
I
act.
do. I wouldn't.
Actually, I'd say that just being a Christian is an immoral act, but that's a little more difficult
but
to
it's-
explain.
but in terms of what the indictments, the worldwide indictment against the Catholic Church clergy and hiding crimes of
Yes,
pedophilia and
the immorality
the
is very
Rwandan
blatant in that.
genocide, the deaths of people from AIDS in Africa, because idiots won't say you can't use a condom.
Yeah.
Jesus. And not to mention the money laundering at the Vatican Bank. And the complicity of the Catholic Church in Hitler's regime.
Well, it's basically a mafia. It's a type of mafia, is what it is.
Yeah, very much.
Organized. Yeah. Organized.
It's
crime.
organized crime.
Yeah.
I have trouble believing that they couldn't be charged under RICO laws in the U.S. and organized crime laws in Canada. Maybe why not? So a letter
Because
signed
religion
by-
has a free ride.
Oh, yeah. A letter signed by 4 Victorian bishops, including Archbishop of Melbourne, Peter, whoever he is, I don't care who he is, warns the new laws will mark a new and deeply troubling chapter of healthcare. We cannot cooperate with the facilitation of suicide, even when it seems motivated by empathy or kindness. Well, then get the fuck away from healthcare. That's all I gotta say.
Well,
Yeah.
it would seem to me that if you take the celebrated principle of do no harm, then keeping somebody alive when they don't want to be is harming them.
Oh, but there's redemptive suffering, David.
Oh, yes, I see.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's apparently. Yeah,
Anybody
yeah.
Yes, I've heard that one.
That's not fucked up,
Anybody believes in redemptive suffering, you don't want to be anywhere near me if you ever
No kidding.
respect
Yeah,
that.
That's Mother Teresa, isn't it? Redemptive
Yeah.
suffering.
yeah,
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Until it
myth
came
of
to her
Mother
care,
Teresa.
Yeah.
Some doctors from the editors from the Lancet went to visit her whatever you call
Clinic.
it. Clinic, something like that. Yeah, we'll call it a clinic. They were absolutely appalled at
Really?
what went on. Yeah, they published it in the Lancet. But
And then there was Christopher Hitchens' book prior to that, even, right?
yeah.
But when did they when was this published in the Lancet? What year?
Well, it was a long time ago.
Was it before Hitchens's book?
After, I believe.
Was it after?
After.
It could have been, yeah. Maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And there's
Anyway,
also
they did
a book
investigate.
by an Indian author that's really interesting.
Oh,
too.
yeah, I think
I forget his name.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen some interviews with him, I think. Yeah, so, of course, the usual Catholic bleedings, and they will be dragged kicking and screaming into the 17th century at least. I don't expect them to come to the 21st anytime soon, but it's just control. It's this control that they want over your life, everything. And they want you to be Catholic even if you're not Catholic. This is what really pisses me off.
Well, it's all about power, yeah.
They want you to abide by their rules even if you're not one of them. And
Yeah.
that's so common in all, it's not just common in Catholicism and Christianity, but if you talk about the regressive left, the most vociferous of them, or virulent of them.
Yes, yeah.
They absolutely, you must abide by our rules or we will shame you mercilessly. And there's a trick to this. Don't let it bug you. They call you a racist.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think I'm a racist? And they're just.
But the pressure to conform cannot be neglected. Nevertheless,
I
they have a
agree,
great
but
conformism. Individuals can fight against it, but on a social level, it's unfortunately very effective. People conform to that mentality because they're afraid of being accused of being racist or Islamophobic or whatever.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, it does work a lot. So all the more reason to fight against it if you can.
Yeah. Totally agree.
So yeah, there's 68 safeguards in this bill, and the Catholics are still complaining about, the vulnerable and the doctors too in New Zealand. I mean, it's just Anyway, but
safeguards in the legislation.
In Victoria,
yeah.
But they're still complaining.
Meaning something like if you can't perform that service yourself, you are to refer it to a legitimate provider of that service. Is that what you mean?
No, I mean like if you didn't really want that to go through that, but you're being
to make sure it's really conformed to your wishes.
Yeah.
To make sure you're not being manipulated or
coerced
or whatever. Yeah. Which is a legitimate concern.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also in Canada's law. So. This is a good news story from Catholic world, which is rare. An archbishop told a Jesuit school to fire a gay teacher. They said no.
Nice.
So somebody who was in a same-sex marriage, the Archbishop of Indianapolis wanted the Brebeuf Jesuit Preparatory School to fire that person because, here's the quote, to effectively bear witness to Christ, whether they teach religion or not. All ministers in their professional and private lives must convey and be supportive of Catholic Church teaching.
We've got to do the Catholic Watch thing, didn't we?
Yeah, we
There's a Brebeuf College right here in Montreal, near where I live. Yeah. I wonder if it's named after the same guy.
Oh, I'm sure.
He must be some famous Catholic.
Some famous Brebeuf. Yeah, probably a right saint, a great person that you wouldn't want to meet. So they said no, and that this is really, like people are saying, this is a rare event. They usually listen to archbishops. They're finally getting it. Stop listening to these bigots and hiders of crime. I mean,
I was just trying to What good has the Catholic Church done ever?
Yeah, well, education,
especially in the
I think, is
past
one.
100 years.
It's
Well,
all-
yeah, okay, I'll grant that, right?
There was a time when they controlled the hospitals and the schools, and so the only
Still-
education and healthcare that was available to many people was provided by the Catholic Church, but they
Yeah.
got plenty of privileges in return. So, I mean, it was, well, the residential schools are
Yeah.
an extension of that, you know.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, and then look where that ended up, right?
Yeah.
Anything that this kind of thing touches is just terrible.
Really, yeah, yeah.
Doesn't mean, I think, that if we got rid of religion today that things would be all hunky dory. I'm just saying that that is the last bastion for hiding one's bigotry or
And this
misogyny
institution
or-
has persisted through centuries, along with, you know, the bullshit that they were pulling and hiding, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not just, oh, you know, the local church here is, you know, there's a bad guy. No, this is systemic, internationally, through decades, if not centuries, and that's sickening, you know? Yeah.
You know, that's just good. I don't know if you guys have in Quebec have been following this story. David and Colette Stephans, who have been charged. They were charged with failing to provide the necessaries of life for their 18-month-old son Ezekiel, and who died of bacterial meningitis 7 years ago. And the Supreme Court gave them a retrial. And so now the retrial is going on, and we've been kind of following the retrial as it goes on. And a couple of things have happened since our last episode. And a pediatric doctor was cross-examined, and in a voir dire, the testimony of that pediatrician has been entered into the court record. So the judge accepted it. That's just a minor thing, but the big thing was okay. Judge proves test, the same one. Okay, the big news is that the lawyer for Colette Stephans tried to put forward a motion to dismiss the charges against the Stephans because he said there is no evidence before the court, and I would invite the court to dismiss the charges against the Stephans. And this is the guy who thinks that in order to prove its case, the prosecution has to show that Ezekiel would be alive today. I would be really surprised if that's the case. I mean, failing to provide the necessaries of life, it means you didn't get your child the proper medical care. Whether or not the child would be alive today isn't really relevant, but the judge noted that one of the pediatricians testified that 100% of people who are inflicted with bacterial meningitis and don't seek medical help die. But those who get help in a timely fashion, I assume they mean, have a 95% survival rate. That
alone says he probably would be alive then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't even think it has to. You failed to provide that medical care, that standard of care. Whether or not Ezekiel would be alive today isn't relevant. That's for another charge, as far as I'm concerned. But negligence causing death, or something like that. But anyway, it's interesting to hear David Stephans talk about what's going on. He says, our feelings of the judge are really good. We've had a very fair judge since June 3rd who took over the trial proper, and he has acted very fairly to both the Crown and to the defense, and that is new to us. Oh, fuck. In all the proceedings we've had since 2013, we've never seen that. Oh, right. Sure you haven't. That's because you didn't like the outcome last time, did you, David? Anyway, he goes on. We're very confident moving forward here. Not arrogant, but confident. Oh, I think
My ass.
arrogance is the least of your problems, buddy. Just based on the evidence that's going to come forward and based on what's taken place with the evident... should be evidence. What the... Jeez. They need editors. Thus far, we've been able to dismantle the Crown's witnesses, he thinks, because we now have a lot more evidence available to us now than we did in 2016. You are so deluded.
Oh, this guy has zero remorse.
He thinks
And I think the poor wife is just I swear she's been lobotomized. She's just like...
She doesn't say anything. She's the smart one.
Well, that's just it. If she was smart, she'd have fled from this fucking asshole a long time ago.
Well, and
what's more, like another thing you posted, Randy, is that she's caring for 3 kids and one
that
who
was the
missed
complaint.
infant.
Yeah. We haven't had time to prepare, and the judge is like, okay, so what?
Yeah, too bad.
That's it.
But
there's no nonsense from this judge. I love it.
They've had another child in the interim, is my point. And I mean, obviously, I don't want to take anybody's reproductive rights away or whatever, but what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a terrible thing for me to say. Send your hate mail to me, but what the fuck?
Yeah,
well,
he's so deluded.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really.
Yeah. I'm afraid I have to leave you now, or maybe you're almost finished. Or
actually, we're kind of almost finished. I think we just got a couple of stories here from.
Okay, I'll hang around for a minute then.
Thanks, Steve.
Well, you had something here, Christine. I almost said Twyla.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Humanist International. You managed to
this is very, very important. Yeah, because this is a thing that's going on in the here and now, and this woman's life is under threat, and it was kind of underground, which was
this is
kind of how I knew about
Humanist,
it. Thank goodness I could put it out there, right?
Humanist International. They're trying to urge Pakistani authorities to drop charges against a human rights and peace activist, Gulali Ismail, and urge the Pakistani army chief to intervene in support of Gulali, and calls for intervention from the United States. Now, what did she do that pissed off Pakistani authorities?
Doesn't take much in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Well, other than
she's the founder. I want to double check this because she's the founder of an organization pertaining to, I guess, girls' rights, and I just can't remember the name of it offhand here. So I want to make sure that we talk about that, or at least put it out there so we know the good work she's done.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was related to this. There was a rape and murder of a 10-year-old girl, and that sparked huge protests and the suspension of the police chief for not investigating, or he was accused of not investigating. And her body was discovered in a nearby forest 5 days after she disappeared, and there were large protests in Islamabad. So originally from the Pashtun minority Mahmud region bordering Afghanistan, her family refused to bury her body until the post-mortem examination was carried out. Officer Muhammad Imran said, police chief, why don't they just stop using first names for men in the Islamic world? They're all Muhammad.
Huh.
Officer Muhammad Imran said police chief Muhammad Abbas.
It's convention to name the full name first and then the last name after, right? From there on.
But I mean, like, come on. I mean, how do you differentiate? Hey, Muhammad. Like, anyway.
It's kind of like being called Chris. I don't know. I answered anything, right?
Yeah, but that's a little bit not quite as common as Muhammad, right?
True.
But 2 suspects have been arrested in connection with the investigation into the girl's death. The police chief was suspended for failing to act promptly in the case, and an investigation launched. So there's some action in there. Ooh, in October, authorities executed a man convicted of killing 8 children. Ooh, interesting. It says it attracted media coverage worldwide, but it missed me. Anyway, yeah, go ahead on Gulalai. She was she was part of the protest, right?
She initiated an organization called Aware Girls. She's a social justice advocate in the real sense of the word.
Yeah.
And we need to put pressure on the Canadian government and the embassy in Pakistan to help, make sure she gets out okay, or makes it safely to the Canadian embassy in Pakistan where her passport is being held. And so pressure. Put it on. Contact your MLA. Have them contact, contact your MP. Have them contact, the relevant sources in the Canadian government and put the screws to them. And while we're at it, we might as well talk about RAF, but Badawi, just as an aside on that one,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Free RAF.
Yeah.
It's been 7 years, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Terrible.
For a long time.
And it's we have 2 stories left. 2 stories left. All right. The Saudi government is hunting down women who flee the country by tracking the IMEI number on their cell phones, which is something that is used by military and I assume police forces as well. So anytime they ever use their phone, and if they have the IMEI data, they can track you down more effectively than triangulation off the cell phone towers, apparently. And so the Saudis are going into we're not talking about their own country, we're talking about other countries, and basically grabbing them and bringing them back to Saudi Arabia. And that could be as many, who knows how many, as many as 1,000 escape Saudi Arabia each year. They found 4 of them, all of whom have fled in the past 2 years, about their experience about being tracked, but they managed to stay clear of being taken back. And a lot of this happens in, it's not going to happen in Canada, or it's very difficult anyway. Canada.
I was going to say, you can't really say that.
I can't say it won't happen, but I think it'd be much more difficult. But you kind of have to have the back channel to the government of the country that you're nabbing the person in. Almost like what almost happened to that woman in Thailand, the Saudi woman that was escaping and eventually came to Canada. Last year, and they pretty much had the ear of the Thai government. It wasn't until the public outcry that got quashed. One last thing. Texas City bans abortion, which, by the way, is illegal, I think. Roe v. Wade is still law of the land. Says it's a sanctuary for the unborn.
What a way of twisting words and meanings and manipulating the social context of a certain discourse pertaining to immigration, that kind of thing, oh man, that's just fucked up. Yeah. Like I said, it's all about persuasion and nothing to do with truth.
A lot of emotional arguments surround abortion and not really so much logic to it.
Yeah.
And this is definitely the case here. Wascom, Texas. A small Texas city has passed a local abortion ban and declared itself a sanctuary city for the unborn. Right to Life of East Texas. Yeehaw! Says I'm
guessing that they're going to make, available things like, prenatal care and, subsidies for women who are single mothers and.
Yeah, totally. Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That baby has rights till the minute it's born.
Till they're born, that's exactly it. You're on your kid, get a job.
Yes. Put your bootstraps up, right?
What do you mean you're only an infant? Get out there, flip burgers. All right.
Into the coal mines with you.
I'm not a big fan of the framing of this, but anyway, Right to Life of East Texas says the vote Tuesday by the all-male Wascom City Council, as if there are no women who are against abortion. Means the city along the Louisiana border is standing for life. Standing for life. And they even refer to groups that provide abortion services as criminal organizations. Did you hear that?
Well, that's simply false legally. They're not criminal.
Yeah.
Well, you know what?
Crime? What crime?
That's an objective fact that they're defying.
Yeah.
They're stating a falsehood. That's clear.
Yeah.
Actually,
if we're going to go that route, then why don't we shut down the veterinarian clinics and make it really, really difficult for you to put your pet down when it's suffering? Like why is this just applying to humans? Yeah, I think I might go off in a rant now, but come on, we do this kindness, ridiculous.
Yeah, I think we have good evidence. City leaders expressed concern that Louisiana's new tighter abortion restrictions could lead to women to travel to Texas for the procedure. You think? The ordinance is largely
or a coat hanger.
Coat hanger, push down the stairs, or
Yeah.
As no one was performing. Oh, okay. It's a symbolic thing because no one is performing abortions in Wascom.
What?
There's no clinic and there's no doctor there performing abortions. Yeah. Apparently.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
Said City Attorney Kurt Truelove. What a great name, Truelove. Says he expects a legal challenge. Well, not the least of which for labeling Planned Parenthood a criminal organization. That is slander.
That would be a form of slander. Yeah. I think.
Great.
Well, okay. I think it's defamation of character is a broader term, and there's libel and slander. And libel, I believe, is print, and slander is the spoken word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And they're both defamation of character.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Very difficult to prove too, because Well, you have to prove that you've had a negative impact. It's harmed your character, and sometimes negative publicity actually makes people more famous and stuff like that, right? So it's a very difficult one to win.
The burden, if you call somebody a racist, the burden is on you to show that they are racist. Because if you can't, then the charge of slander stands.
But only if it harms your career or your reputation.
Yeah, but I think
you have to show harm of some kind.
I think there's no doubt here about harm. I mean, it's keeping women from seeking abortion services that they are legally entitled to.
But then you just said revealed the fact that there were no abortion services in this town.
Yeah.
So no harm, no direct harm has been done.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
Well, it's about the reputation. It's not about harming. The reputation of a speaker or an individual. That's how you would sue on the basis of defamation of character, right? So the harm that is being presented to women, which is obvious and clear, isn't in that realm of law, I would say.
Well, I would say when they talk about abortion providers as being criminal, that is a form of defamation. Yeah, and that could be prosecutable.
Yeah,
and it could hurt outside of the city, though. That could hurt anywhere that they have a clinic.
Yes, that goes beyond the borders of the town.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
so it could be construed that way.
Yeah,
but it's. This is a virtue signal. This is what.
And also you have to make the case that it's been a material cause of negative cause in your life, like you've lost money, right? And I think some people that, hey, I'm going to perform abortions, might just very well be getting positive, attention. Okay, this is a guy who's willing, or the woman who's willing to speak out and defend what they do, as opposed to,
sort of like the Morgenthaler.
Yeah. So you can't really show that it's had a negative impact on them. And like I said, sometimes that kind of supposedly negative publicity will actually advance people and give them a much better reputation or lucrative career than not having had them slandered or whatever in that case, right? If that makes sense. Like I'm thinking Milo, whatever his last name is. Yeah, like negative attention is just attention, and he gets,
that's all he.
Obviously, down spiral, but
in the end,
careers have been launched based on freaking porno clips that have, been, with celebrities and stuff like that, right? Like negative attention isn't necessarily going to harm your reputation. Let's put it that way. It's a very hard one to prove. Defamation of character is a very difficult one. Yeah.
Well, they did it with the Oberlin College, and that was good.
Yeah.
More power to them.
Was that jury pissed off or what? They actually gave more than they were legally allowed.
Yeah.
Penalties. That's this thing of beauty. It's about time that these colleges stopped acting irresponsibly and started their students are not children, and it's time that they stopped treating them like that, because they'll take the ball and run with it, and where does that end? Well,
and what's the consequences for these students that have,
for the students? Nothing.
Yeah. The college is getting blamed for the actions of adults.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. If you could identify leaders of it, I suppose you could do something there. But how much money could you get out of them?
Who's going to pay the money? Who's going to pay the money?
Yeah, exactly. So the college has a huge endowment fund. It's like $500 million.
If professors, instructors, or whatever are participating and encouraging, if they're just neutral and say, okay,
flyers, that was a big mistake.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
They handed out flyers with defaming material in it, and that was it.
Yeah.
That's all she had to do.
Yeah.
And that was slam dunk after that. Not to mention, the email helped too about sicking stupid people. What a sick human being. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I got tonight. Well, thank you, David, for being on the podcast. And
very much last minute.
And can you send me the link to where I can find the podcast? And okay.
Is there anything else you'd like to promote or talk about before we sign off?
Well, I gave you those three links.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
And my personal blog, the website of the association, and then that other article, which is excellent on the AHA website.
Yeah.
I would encourage people to read those.
Humanist.com.
Yeah.
Humanist.com.
Thehumanist.com.
Yeah.
Thehumanist.com. Yes.
Atheist free thinking.
And it's
atheology.ca.
Yes, and the AHA article is entitled Quebec Secularism Bill, and it's written by Luis Granados. Luis is his first name, Granados. Granados.
Okay, thanks.
So well with the time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Good night.